notice, today's session obviously will be recorded and hosted in the shared drive for future reference. Since this is a nibble and not a feast, put your questions in the chat. We can address them at the end and discuss them further. All the questions will be collected, answered, and shared in the drive if we don't get to them, along with references and resources. If you have a question after we've ended, send it to us and we will ensure it gets included in the document. This session is meant to be informational and educational. I am not a representative of the government, nor do I administer the thrift savings plan. I am a military qualified financial planner and do have 20+ years experience as the spouse of a U.S. naval officer. We do have a TSP account and a pension. Our newest employee, also online with us, Christian Gerardo, also has military experience and has helped fact check for this session. The information provided is an overview of the federal government's retirement system and how we might apply to our participants. I will be presenting, obviously, but our team is here in the wings supporting everything. All right. So here's what we're going to learn today. We will compare and contrast the different tiers of the government's retirement system. We will detail how the government matches contributions and what funds are available. While we don't encourage loans or early withdrawals from any retirement savings, we will review the options available. Lastly, we will combine this information to understand the considerations at different career stages for TSP. Let's start by understanding who can participate. Basically, the only hard eligibility criteria are they must be currently employed by a federal government agency. This is everything from military service members and federal law enforcement to scientists and politicians. Think of the U.S. Forestry Division, the U.S. Geological Survey, and NASA. There are even certain benefits for volunteers of the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps Vista. Unless otherwise described, the information in this session will apply to those currently employed. Now the basic structure, kind of the most boring part. Established in 1986 by Congress, the Federal Employees Retirement System, or FERS, consists of 3 components: the Basic Benefit Plan, the benefits earned through the Social Security Administration, and the Thrift Savings Plan, or TSP. How your participant refers to the retirement plan will likely depend on which sector of the government they work and when they started working. Federal civilian employees refer to the most current version of the retirement system as FERS. The military refer to it more frequently as BRS, or Blended Retirement System, or simply TSP. Anyone on the older system refers to it as the Legacy High 3 plan. In an overview of the components, we're not going to spend much time with the Social Security benefits since we are all familiar with them. In regard to your participants, it may be helpful to educate them on where they can go to estimate their benefits. While they may not necessarily need the information during the program with you, it may be helpful if they are considering more long-term employment. The basic benefit plan component of the defined benefit plan, or more commonly referred to as the pension portion of the retirement system. It is determined by a predefined formula based on the number of creditable service years and the highest income for 3 consecutive years. We will get more into that in a moment. The Thrift Savings Plan is the defined contribution component of the plan. In 2018, the government revamped the retirement system in an effort to increase the number of individuals leaving military service and government service with retirement benefits by adding matching TSP contributions. Prior to that, contributions were made only by participants. During 2018, those in service had the option of choosing to remain in the older High 3 system, which is now referred to as a legacy system, or transitioning to the Blended Retirement System, or BRS. The calculation for the pension was reduced slightly as the government started contributing to the individual's TSP. Anyone who joined service from the 1st of January 2019 has automatically been placed in the Blended Retirement System. Here's a more in-depth look at the pension plan, or rather the pension portion of the plan. Similar to other pension plans, once the individual has met the required vesting components and reaches an eligible retirement age, they receive a monthly income for life. The federal pension is often referred to as the High 3 plan due to the way it calculates the benefit. Again, it takes into account the highest earnings from 3 consecutive years of employment. While these years are typically found at the end of service, they can be from any period of federal employment. 1% of those earnings are then multiplied by the number of creditable service from the eligible civilian department, agency, or service. If the individual leaves uniformed services with unpaid retirement and enters civilian federal employment, which happens often, they can apply their military service towards the creditable years. All unpaid sick leave or any service rather can also be applied, along with the option to buy back creditable service, which varies by sector. In order to get the max benefit, 20 years of creditable service is required. If they work fewer than 5, they may be eligible for a refund of the contributions. They can start and stop government employment by adding creditable service along the way. The minimum amount deducted for an individual's paycheck is approximately 4.4%. Additional deductions will depend on which sector they work. To help a participant understand how much is being deducted from their pay, you'll find it under the deduction section of their pay stub, which is their leave and earning statement, most commonly referred to as the LES. The deduction will be labeled Retire FERS. The calculation for basic benefit plan for civilians starts at 1% of their high 3 base pay. As we stated, multiply the years of service plus their TSP contributions with match. That 1% may differ slightly from which agency they work for. The calculation differs for the military, as retirement, either serving full service or medical, is the only way to obtain the pension portion of the plan.
All right, I'm looking at it. I got 2.5 times 20 times 3. What do you got?
Negative. I thought it was 2.0 times 20 times 3.
No. All right, we got to get this right, so give her a call.
Robin 1, reach 729er.
Robin 1, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Reach 729er. What's the calculation for the defined benefit?
Reach 729er. Question understood. Be advised that if you're in the legacy or a high 3 retirement plan, your multiplier is 2.5% times years served times your high 3 rate. If you switch from legacy into the blended retirement system, your multiplier is 2.0% times years served times high 3. But you also receive automatic and matching contributions to your thrift savings plan break. So it's 2.5% for high 3 and it's 2.0% for the BRS. Plus, you get automatic and matching government contributions to your TSP. Over.
Reach 729er. Copy all. Appreciate the help, ma'am.
Anytime, gentlemen. Robin 1 out. Blue skies, fellas. Blue skies.
All right, super clear, right? All right, so less fun than that tiny video are the calculations broken down here. The multiplier, again, for military members depends on the year they joined. After 2019, they are automatically placed into the BRS. Before 2018, they were in the legacy high 3. To further complicate things, during 2018, they had the option of choosing to remain in the legacy system or move to the blended system. It can be quite confusing. Knowing if they are receiving a matching contribution or not is important for their TSP discussion. The participant can find their specific plan by visiting the 3 websites listed. On the left is the FERS platform, in the middle is the Defense Finance and Accounting Service, or DFAS, and on the right is TSP. And the last component of the plan is the thrift savings plan, which we're all here about. It's the qualified plan that's similar to a 401k. The individual chooses the percentage of their base pay to contribute to pre or post-tax accounts from a limited choice of funds with very low fees. There are special tax exclusions for service members in designated combat zones. As taxes are eliminated for service members in combat zones, any contributions they make will be tax-free, which is unique even for the traditional option. While the contributions will not be taxed when they are taken out, the earnings on them will. So to hopefully clarify that, since I can't talk today, any contributions made to a traditional TSP account will not be taxed going in or out, but everything that they earn on there will be taxed. Maybe that's super clear, maybe it's not. Ask a question in the chat. The maximum annual contribution for TSP also increases for those in combat zones. It is likely that they will not be able for a active duty service member to max their annual limit, let alone more than that, due to the fact that the contributions can only be made by designating a percentage of their base pay. This means that the monthly contribution to meet or exceed the max would likely be half or more of the individual's pay. There are 2 scenarios in which you might find the capacity to meet the max. The first is that they contribute special bonuses or incentive pay, as they can choose to contribute any portion of it or all of it. The second would be if they are granted permission to work a second job. Despite the fact that it has been a part of the plan since its inception, the shift to matching contributions has made utilizing TSP a more popular choice. So why the change? Here's a quick explanation put together by the Department of Defense, which also applies to federal employees.
People have been asking, why a new retirement system for service members starting in 2018? We've asked these Marines to help with a little demonstration. One objective of the new system is expanding the pool of service members who receive government retirement benefits. You see, under the current High 3 system, you must stay in the military a minimum of 20 years in order to receive a government retirement benefit. But only about 20% of service members make it to a 20-year retirement. That's like 8 out of 10, walking away with no government retirement benefits. So, enter the blended retirement system. Under BRS, service members are eligible to receive government retirement benefits after just 2 years of service. Under the BRS, about 8 out of 10 service members will receive government retirement benefits, putting service members in step with their civilian counterparts. Because you're there for us. Your retirement should be there for you.
That's a fact! Yay! Some more more facts on how to get started now that we understand what the TSP is. So like many qualified employer plans, it is likely that the participant doesn't know the details of the account and possibly hasn't even created login credentials. Despite automatically being enrolled into the TSP with 5% of their base pay into the L fund, which will be discussed a little bit later, they will still need to claim their account. As a new account portal was released in June of 2022, anyone who owned an account prior but hasn't logged in since will still need to do so. Contributions can be changed in their pay platform, which will differ by service and agency. These include the Marine One or MOL, DFAS, and Direct Access, all of which are detailed in the resources we'll have. To guide your participant, you won't need to understand each platform. Simply ask them where they view their LES. That will be the platform they need. There is an annual limit, which typically changes every year, just like a 401k. As a side note, it is important to know that the matching only occurs in months when the participant contributes. It is not an annual total contributions match. On a rare occasion, if they max out their contributions before the end of the year, matching will only occur in the months they contributed. Should this be the case, consider strategizing the contribution plan to ensure all 12 months have a match. The TSP calculator link is an excellent tool for those curious about what they can save for the federal retirement plan. It includes retirement income modeler, federal ballpark estimate calculator, and how much can I contribute calculator that breaks down the annual limit into monthly payments. Here's a breakdown of how the contributions are matched. When first enrolled, they will have a contribution of 10% of their base pay, as the participant will be contributing 5% and receiving a 5% match. Regardless of whether or not the participant contributes, they will receive a 1% base pay contribution that is subject to vesting minimums. They receive a full match for the first 3% and then 0.5% for the next 2 percentages. The match maxes at 5%, which includes 1% of the guaranteed contribution and 4% of the additional matching contributions. They are automatically enrolled into an age-appropriate target date fund, known as a life cycle fund or L fund, in the TSP options. This still remains a good choice to take advantage of automatic rebalancing. Risk tolerance can obviously be matched by adjusting the target date year. Each L fund is comprised of other options available in TSP. The farther the time horizon, the more aggressive the mix. TSP funds are similar to mutual funds in that they allow investors to pool money and purchase shares of a portfolio containing hundreds of investment options. TSP funds are designed specifically and exclusively for TSP participants, with their only goal being to maximize participants' retirement savings. Let's take a closer look at each of these individual funds. The Government Securities Investment Fund, G Fund, is the most conservative, being derived from short-term US securities. Due to the time horizon of our participants' demographics, this will be probably not something that is heavily invested in their mix. Being ever more so slightly aggressive but still conservative is the Fixed Income Index Investment Fund, or F Fund. Again, this will not be a heavily weighted inclusion. The participants will benefit from historical growth by including mostly the next 2 to 3 funds. The Common Stock Index Investment Fund, C Fund, is comprised of nearly 82% of the US stock market, matching the performance of the S&P 500. If the participant is only willing to invest in one fund other than the L fund, this would be one to potentially be the benefit them the most. The Small Cap Index Investment Fund, S Fund, can kind of be considered like picking up the rest of the domestic market. It is slightly more aggressive than the C Fund. When invested in both the C and the S Fund, the portfolio will have captured close to 100% of the US domestic stock market. The International Stock Market Investment Fund, I Fund, carries the most risk, being comprised of large companies located in developing countries. While it has a similar performance to the MSCI All Country World Index, it does exclude companies located in the Hong Kong Investable Market Index and China. TSP is considered to be a low fee option among similar private owned retirement options. The gross administrative expense ratio is what the government has calculated to cover the cost of administering the plan. The investment expense ratio is what is paid to the TSP investment manager. And the net administrative expense ratio is the cost of the plan after forfeitures and loan fees are subtracted. When someone leaves the program without vesting, TSP applies that 1% agency service automatic contribution that is accumulated back to the plan. It also applies the fees collected from TSP loans. Both reduce the overall cost of the plan. The total expense ratio currently is the net administrative expense ratio plus the investment ratio. This averages out to be 0.048%. Added this year, 2024, is the option to invest through the mutual fund window. It is comprised of a continually growing list of mutual funds, currently totaling around 4,500 mutual funds. You can think of the mutual fund window as adding funds that the general public can access, such as Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund, Schwab S&P 500 Index Fund, Fidelity Total Market Index Fund, just to name a few, as well as Vanguard and Fidelity Target Date Funds. In order to utilize the mutual fund window, participants must first sell their shares of TSP exclusive funds. These funds are then used to purchase new shares from the available general public funds list. The initial investment into the mutual fund window cannot exceed 25% of the participant's total TSP account. This means the participant will likely require a minimum of $40,000 in their TSP account, as the initial investment for entering the mutual fund window is $10,000. In an effort to prevent participants from chasing the market, they are limited to conducting 2 transactions per month unless they are moving money into the G fund. They are allowed unlimited additions to the G fund. Once in the G fund, they can freely move it into other TSP specific funds. When considering purchasing mutual funds through the mutual fund window, calculate all of the fees. In addition to the fund specific fees and expenses, using the mutual fund window incurs an annual administrative fee of $150 and a $28.75 per action per transaction cost. Total costs may turn an attractive fund into a less affordable fund when purchased through the mutual fund window rather than directly in a Roth IRA. Third Decade does not recommend taking loans or non-qualified withdrawals from any retirement account. The same is true for TSP. Lending practices to the government employees, specifically military members, have historically been quite predatory. It's not uncommon for military leaders, coworkers, and some service-specific financial specialists to lean towards TSP loans, as they are more transparent. As with any consideration for a loan against retirement savings, illustrate the consequences and weigh them against the benefits. When applying for a TSP loan, there is a resource that spells out the potential consequences. Of note, a TSP loan is a non-consumer credit loan. It is not reflected on the credit report and only reported to IRS. If it's decided that a TSP loan is the most beneficial action, you'll next want to consider the length of the loan repayment to the length of the service or employment. The loan is repaid back by allotment, which comes directly out of a paycheck while employed. Leaving employment triggers a new repayment option and must be budgeted into their new income. Up to 2 loans can be taken out at once. We will compare these soon. Additionally, the minimum amount that can be borrowed is $1,000 of the participant's own contributions, with a maximum being $50,000. The fixed interest rate at which the funds are borrowed is determined by the interest rate of the G fund in effect to the 15th of the previous month. The current month's rate is always posted on the TSP website. It's important to understand that while repayment is deducted straight from the paycheck, it is the participant's responsibility to ensure that the correct amount and that it's on time. Military admin processing times can fluctuate due to staffing, workload, and workup tempos. Confirming the loan is processed correctly is the participant's responsibility. I cannot stress this enough. Repayment will begin 60 days from the loan's distribution. There are 2 types of loans that can be received, are general purpose and residential. The participant can carry up to 2 loans at one time, but only one can be a residential loan. In order to take advantage of another loan, the previous loan must have been paid off at least 30 days. The funds are only taxable if they are not repaid, and the process for obtaining the loan is done simply by completing a form on the website. A formal application with qualifiers is not part of the process. However, each has its own processing fee and requires spousal consent. A general loan can be used for any reason. Because of that, no documentation is needed. This can be helpful in the rare situations that make personal loans difficult to acquire. The sum can be repaid in 1 to 5 years. A residential loan can be used for the construction or purchase of a primary residence, not an investment or a vacation property. Documentation of any kind showing that the residence is being purchased by the participant can be submitted within verification within 30 days of submitting the request. Different from a mortgage or a HELOC, it does not have tax advantages because it is not considered either type of credit. The property must have a livable dwelling on it. It cannot be a parcel or a land. It cannot be used to pay off an existing mortgage, buy out another person's share of the residence, or make repairs or renovations to an existing property. This type of loan can be repaid in 5 to 15 years. Financial hardship withdrawals can be taken out by employees to fund an immediate and significant financial need. Participants are afforded the opportunity to take 1 financial hardship withdrawal every 6 months. Documentation for a qualifying reason must be provided. It is different from a loan in that it permanently reduces your TSP balance because it cannot be repaid. Additionally, the $1,000 minimum can be from their own contributions or the contributions of their own and their earnings. These withdrawals are subject to 10% penalty withdrawal and any other applicable income taxes. We won't spend much time on the exceptions to the 10% early withdrawal tax penalty because third decade participants are not likely to need these funds for these types of events, but it's always a possibility. The events highlighted in the gold are the rare events that have the potential to be most affecting to our participants, followed by the green events, and lastly, the white events. Much more likely to occur or be up for consideration is separation from the military or government employment. There are three main points to review when preparing for separation. The first is whether or not a participant has reached the vesting point for the defined contribution portion of the plan, or TSP. This is 2 years for uniform service and 5 years for civilian employees. The next consideration is that the status of any loan. Fitting the repayment into the new budget is crucial, as well as defining how it can be paid every month. While employment paychecks are made directly, payments are made directly from the paycheck. Again, payments cannot be deducted from retiree pay or civilian pay, and now must require direct debit. The antiquated check or money order can also be used. Once being notified or becoming delinquent, the participant will have 90 days to make payments. Foreclosed loans cannot be repaid and will result in a taxable event. It will not affect their credit score and will not show up on a credit report. Lastly, but most importantly, is to determine a new vehicle for retirement savings. Once separated, regular contributions can no longer be made to the TSP account. If the participant does not have an affordable eligible employer plan, a Roth IRA is obviously, most likely rather, a best recommendation. It's a common misconception that once a participant exits the government service, they must also liquidate their TSP account. They can choose to leave their funds in their TSP account. They can move their funds among other TSP funds, or if their contributions meet the requirement limits, the mutual fund window. The only required distribution is if their account balance totals less than $200 upon separation. If choosing to move from the TSP funds into a rollover account, either the IRA or the eligible employer plan must determine if the custodian accepts the DSP rollovers. The minimum amount required and if there are any tax consequences will be the participant's responsibility. To the TSP, they can roll over qualified funds into the TSP. The only exception is funds from a Roth IRA account. They can neither directly nor indirectly be rolled over into the TSP. This makes it acceptable as a collector of eligible employee funds as they switch from employer to employer throughout their career. Like TSP loans, the last option to consider would be distribution of TSP funds. We won't spend much time here either. If the participant decides to take distributions upon separation, there are two options: a distribution in partial, full, or annuity conversion and installments. Both types are subject to applicable taxes. Distributions, once chosen, cannot be canceled, reversed, or changed. Installments, however, can be changed or stopped at any time. And last slide. The next thing for both employed and separated participants is part of the estate planning process of electing beneficiaries. They can elect up to 20 beneficiaries. If no beneficiary is chosen, the government distributes in the default order of precedence, starting with a spouse and ending with the state determined next of kin. Please note that a domestic partner is not identified as a possible beneficiary in the default order. A spouse will have the most control over an inherited account, and third decade participants generally don't require a robust estate plan, but ensuring beneficiaries are designated is on the top of every recommendation list. Thinking about whether or not loans, taking out loans for TSP would be something to consider. So the first scenario is purchasing a home. So TSP is one of the options that you can use for purchasing a home. There are other things such as VA home loans, obviously first-time home buyer assistance, all the normal civilian stuff. But this is kind of what we have here. What are your thoughts about accessing TSP funds for purchasing a home? Great, so let's go to the second one that developed. So this is more for the financial hardship withdrawals. So again, these can be taken for qualifying reasons, disaster, illness, all of that horrific things once every 6 months. You cannot repay them, so it is a permanent reduction in your TSP funds account. What are our thoughts around financial hardship withdrawal recommendations?
I was on Reddit, which is where all the greatest financial information is. And
aside from
can't,
TikTok.
yeah, and I can't remember if it was like r/thrift savings plan or one of the other groups, but it was interesting because one person said, "Yeah, I love the mutual fund window because he was, putting as much as he could into like I think it was like the Vanguard Technology Fund because technology stocks been on a
Yeah.
crazy tear for the past 7 or 8 years." And he said it was very interesting because he said, if you look at the last 20 years, tech stocks have outperformed the S&P 500 by 4x, right, for 400%. And so, and technically that's true, but all of that came out of the last 7 years, and this is where statistics can be misleading. And so, I replied to him and I said, hey, whatever your asset allocation is, it's fine as long as you stick to it, and you have reasons and all that. But, you have to ask yourself two questions. Number one, in this particular case, the first 13 years where this fund underperformed or just barely kept up with the S&P 500 with more volatility, are you going to be able to stomach that? Are you going to be able to stomach watching your account underperform for 13 years? Because we think that we can because of hindsight, but and question number two is, if the answer to question number one is yes, then where were you the first 13 years of Vanguard Technology Fund? Like, have you been investing in this forever? And then this is just allowing you to put even more into it, it's an interesting, it's like shiny object syndrome. It's like the thing that has really performed well in the past few years attracts all the new dollars, but they've already missed out on some or all of the gains. And so, it's the same thing with the S fund. It's very fascinating. I joined the Navy in 2010. And at that time, when you logged into the TSP website and you looked at like the 5 and 10 and 20-year performance, the S fund outperformed the C fund because small cap stocks had done better during, the early 2000s. And so what did people do back then? Oh, I'm going to put more money in the S fund because that performs better, right? And now when you log in, it's the opposite, right? And people literally, especially on Reddit, they say, oh, don't bother with the S fund. It sucks in every way. It underperforms the C fund. And it's just, this is why I think that target date funds are so wonderful, because people tend to just leave the money in the target date funds and they don't move money back and forth, but it's very interesting. We sabotage our own investment performance by, just constantly being distracted.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that's why we like target date funds too, because you don't have to think about it. There's no like concern. There's no keeping up with the Joneses. There's no like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest trend. How am I doing? Clearly it's something wrong, just like the tech funds. Yeah, it's a great way. Automatic rebalancing, you can set it and forget it, and it's spectacular. So I like the fact that it has a little bit of everything in it, and that they've done a nice job in contributing the max into a target date fund for all the new people. So I think that's amazing. Yay. Well, I appreciate everyone making comments, asking questions, and being a part of this. We will have all of the resources, all of the websites, everything delved out for you to give to your participants probably in a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, because again, I'm behind. And we'll go from there. If you think of any questions afterwards, send them to us. It was lovely to see you. Make sure you put an hour in the volunteer portal, or we'll do it for you. And then let us know if you have any feedback. Does anyone need the feedback slide again, per se? And that concludes the taste of our TSP. We hope you found it delightful. And let me know what else you want to see.